What is up, people? What is up, people? Can you guys hear me? Sound check, visual check. Can you hear me? Vedant, can you hear me? Let me know if you guys can hear me. Yes? Sound check? Sound check? Yes. All right. Siddharth, meanwhile, in virtual, Yajuran, Bhavesh, Red Shadow, Avinash, Siddharth. Good to see you guys. Aditya Kumar, Aditya Suthar. Good to see you guys here. Welcome, welcome, welcome to this special kind of exclusive event. This is for game designers. This is not for everyone. This is a special event for those special people known as game designers. Okay. Yep. No offense to programmers, no offense to artists, right? But this is like more designer focused. It doesn't mean that programmers and artists can't be here, but this is going to be somewhere where we really talk about game design, right? Game design is my passion. Game design is I am a game designer, right? It's my specialty, and for sure today is going to be all about that. Ghost K Web, hello guys. So welcome. Just wait a couple of minutes before we start. Put in the chat where you guys are from, and also, guys, let me know where you guys found out about me. Do you know where are you from? Do you know me from Instagram, or did you get like a WhatsApp message, or are you from a YouTube channel, or both? I'm really curious to know where you guys are from, like where you guys found out about me. That'll be really cool. Instagram. Okay, let me know. Really curious to know about that. Aditya, DSS Sinjit, Rox Rohit, Ghost K Web, Kurama OP, Hyderabad. How are you doing? Sid Unreal, friend of yours, suggests to Unreal. Thank your friend for me. Sai Kiran, that's a Hyderabadi name. Aditya Sutar Gujarat. Did you know I'm half Guju? Uh, Meanwhile, in virtual, Bhuvaneshwar from LinkedIn. Nice. Good to see. LinkedIn post banaya. At least it came. It's some use at least. It's good to know that. Yeah, YouTube interview. Okay. All right. Let's get started, guys. Here's the plan. Let me see if everything is up. Okay. This no this is a QR code that you guys need to scan. So what's going to happen, I'm going to tell you about what the plan is today. This is going to be a not a very long session. This is going to be like a focused session on game design, where I'm going to be teaching you all about, like, I'm going to be telling you, giving you a roadmap for your career. Okay, next, what I want you guys to do is it's too small. Okay. Okay, so scan now. We're gonna have a Zoom event after this. Okay, we're gonna have exclusive call on Zoom where I'm going to be answering all your questions. I'm actually going to be interacting with you guys, right? Because here it's difficult to interact. So I'm going to be having a mentoring session with you guys where I'm going to be answering all your questions, where I'm going to be answering all your questions on game design, right? It's going to be me and there's going to be some more mentors from Gamer to Maker. We're going to answer all your questions. The way to get access is exclusive Zoom call, and the seats are limited because Zoom has limited capacity, remember. So the people who want to be in that and actually have your question answered one-on-one with me, please scan this code. And once you scan this code, you'll be able to submit your questions, right? So do that right now. And till about 9:30 you can do that. Till about 9:30 is the time you can submit questions. After that, we can't take any more questions. Okay, so make sure you do that right now. Yes, yes, it's a free call, don't worry about it. It's a Zoom call where I'm going to be talking to you guys. I'm going to be taking all your questions. Okay, so yeah, so scan this right now. So all right, so let's get started. I have a slideshow because I like slideshows. Let's do this. Okay, let's do this. Okay, so what are we doing here today? Today, I'm going to be telling you what is game design, informing you about what game design is all about, and I'm also going to be telling you about. Oh, by the way, if you can't scan this QR code for some reason, just go in the description of this video. Okay, go in the description of this video. The link is right there to submit your questions. If you're having a problem with this QR code, go to the link in the description, just click on it, and you'll be able to submit your questions and also register for the Zoom call. Okay, so let's get started. Game design roadmap. What exactly is game design? How do you become a game designer? What are the career prospects for game designers? How to learn how to be a game designer? We're going to be talking about all that stuff now. Okay. Oh, quick thing about me. Who am I? I'm the founder of Roach Interactive, which is a game development company, and also the founder of GameToMaker.com, which is an online game development and training school. Right. I'm also the creative lead at a company called Entain. Now, Entain is the world's largest casino game and sports betting company. So I'm the creative lead there. I have my own team, etc. And yeah, next, I've been teaching game design production for 12 years. I started in 2010. I've been teaching, I taught for like 10 years at Backstage Pass. I'm still on the board of education at VIT Bhopal. And I've also taught at Srishti School of Art, Design, and Technology. And a few years ago, a couple of years ago, I stopped teaching and I started my own game school because I realized that the quality of education, even at these institutes, was not very good. Right? Uh, what about my professional career? I've worked Piranha Games in Vancouver. I've been game designer with Game Loft, and I've also worked with Hitpicket Supercells. I've worked with a lot of companies, and I'm not going to bore you with the details. Okay, let's get started. Let's talk about game design, people. Firstly, there's a lot of confusion about what game design is. I know a lot of you. I see you in Instagram. I see your bios. See you here and there, and I say and I hear you saying, "I do game designing," right? I do game designing. Now, what exactly does it mean? Anybody who makes anything to do with games is a game designer. Is if you're making a game in Unity or Unreal, or you're creating some kind of art using Blender, or maybe you're making characters, rigging animation, you're doing some artwork, that is not game designing. Right? What exactly is game design? What exactly does a game designer do? This is very important, guys, because you need to understand what it is. If you don't understand it, you can't learn it. Only if you really deeply understand what it means to be a game designer, you will understand it. So, the term, I don't ever use the term game designing. It really irritates the hell out of me, it triggers me. Right? So I use the term game design. Right now, let's talk about game development first. And within game development, I'm going to give you an idea. I'm going to give you an idea of what game design is. So game development is basically four processes. One is game design, the other is game programming, next you have game art, and next you have game testing. So very broadly, there are four processes in game development: game design, game programming, game art, game testing. Now let me tell you about what exactly game design is. As a game designer, your job as a game designer, asking and answering the following questions. Firstly, who's going to play this game, right? Everybody has a different choice. Some of you like RPGs, some of you like Valorant, some of you like, I don't know, playing mobile games, some of you like playing puzzle games, some of you are crazy about RPGs, GTA. Some of you only like racing games, right? So every player is different. The psychology of every player is different. And the game designer's first job is to find out the psychology of who is going to be playing his or her game. They have to ask the question, who is the player who's going to be playing this game? Very, very, very important question. So, knowing your player, understanding your target market, understanding who's going to be playing your game is really important, because then you're going to be making your game, you're going to be designing your game, your gameplay, your rewards, your skill tree, everything according to what those players like. Okay. Next up, what is the objective of this game? How do you win? Right? Like in cricket, obviously, you know how someone wins. Team A makes so many runs, team B makes more runs, they win, right? If they get all out, then they lose, right? It's a very clear win, lose and win. So the game designer determines, this is a game. What is the win condition? What is the lose condition? How do you win at this game? You win at this game if you complete all 16 levels and you kill the final boss, then you win at this game. So that's one thing which very, very clear. Even for like online games, for MOBAs, etc., your win condition and your objective has to be defined by the game designer. Then, equally important is, what can the player do and what can the player not do? Because people cheat, right? People cheat all the time, people take shortcuts. So the game designer has to define what are the rules of the game, right? The way a referee stands over there in a football match and says, okay, foul, you can do this, you can't do this, and penalize people. A game designer's job is to say, these are the rules of the game. You can shoot, you can jump. If you have a gun, you have 16 bullets. After 16 bullets are over, you have to reload. This is your double jump, you can only go this high. This is a door. If you go through this door, there's going to be, enemies spawning, and you have to kill them. Only after you kill them, you can go to the next level. You have to complete the cinematic, and after the cinematic is completed, you get to know about the story. Then you can go somewhere else. So, and also what the player cannot do, because players do all kinds of crazy shit, right? So your job as game designer is to say, okay, this player can go here, this player is not allowed to go here, but it's going to break the game, so I'm going to lock this door. Or the player can go on this roof but can't actually jump from this roof to this roof, because it actually break the game, it will break the level design. So it's like a chess game that you're playing with the player, in the sense that you are talking to the player, you are finding out what you have to anticipate the players moves, right? Because as players, we do crazy stuff, we do absolutely crazy stuff. So as game designer, your job is to kind of think of what the player is going to do, anticipate that, and be one or two or three moves ahead of what the player is game is going to do, because in the end, you have to create a fun experience for the player, and for that you have to define the rules, right? Now, next, very, very, very important, feeling. Feeling. All games are about feelings. They are essentially a psychological manipulation of people. That might sound crazy, but what you're doing is you're creating illusions with code and art, and you're basically manipulating players' feelings. You're making them feel angry, frustrated, happy, sad, whatever it is at a certain point. So you have to manipulate the feelings of the player from moment to moment, right? You make a player spawn in a certain point. Maybe you put a really strong enemy over there. The player doesn't have enough ammo. You give a small little pistol, you don't give enough ammo, and the player is going nuts, thinking, okay, how am I going to kill this enemy because I don't have enough ammo? So what you're doing is you're creating frustration in the player. You create frustration, and then the player has to solve that problem. But once the player realizes that, okay, maybe if I shoot at this particular part of the enemy, I'm going to be able to inflict more damage, and the player solves that problem. So then that player goes from being frustrated to having that, yes, I did it kind of feeling, right? So that is what the game designer does. The game designer says, okay, I'm going to frustrate the player now. I'm going to make the player angry. I'm going to make the player sad. I'm going to put in a story where like he finds out how his father died, and I'm going to make the player cry. That stuff all done by the game designer. Okay. And of course the player, how the player is going to feel, and how can we make the player feel this way. Now, how you make the player feel a certain way is done by a combination of things. It's done by a combination of game mechanics, storyline, maybe cinematics. Like I just said about getting the player frustrated. Like there are many games in which you have a partner, or you have a pet, or someone with whom you really get attached to, and suddenly the game kills that pet, and then the player is like super miserable because you just lost this character, or you lost this companion that you were really really attached. So that doesn't happen by accident. Like someone says, okay, I'm going to kill this thing, and I'm going to make my player miserable, right? So that really happens. Okay, that really happens. Right. Next, of course, very very importantly, and this is very important for all of you guys from India, because India is by and large, like, if you want to get, I'll talk about this later, but if you want to get a good job, if you want to get like 10 lakh rupees a month, you want to get 10 lakh rupees a month, right? You can get 10 lakh rupees a month. People from Gamer to Maker, my students, have gotten 10.5 lakh rupees passages, 10.5 lakh rupees starting salary while they were still in college, just after finishing G2M, right? So it's possible. But this kind of salary in India is in mobile game companies, and you'll be working on free to play games. So it's one thing to say, okay, like I want to make these cool stories and make PC games and console games. But really, at the end of the day, if you want to make that serious money, if you want to be in that nice studio, if you want to get that good job, that good designation, that, like, you're going to have to probably work in mobile games, which is not bad. A lot of you may not play mobile games, but trust me, you can really get to play, and you can really get to start loving mobile games which are free to play. So in free to play games, the game designer's job is to kind of like obviously get the players in for free, and then say, okay, how do I get this player to spend money? How do I get this player to make an in-app purchase? How do I get this player to watch more ads, or whatever it is? Because you're not charging anything for the game, obviously, and the game has to make money, which means that you have to get some players at least to pay to make in-app purchases. So the game designer's job is to design the game in such a way, of course, along with the data, etc. The data analytics guys, is to design the game in such a way that the game actually players actually make money. And like in G2M, we have an entire free to play game design program. And like I know people personally who have come into the program and said, like, sir, just like, just the classes for free to play, I watched 4 hours of those, and I would say like my money is recovered, because free to play is really difficult to learn, because there's not a lot of resources out there, right? So if you want to succeed, particularly in India, free to play, very, very, very important to learn free to play game design. Okay, now let's talk about the game designer's role in a game studio. What does a game designer do, right? What is the hierarchy? Like, where does the game designer sit? So there's something called a product owner. Now, the product owner is usually the producer of a game. It's the person who knows the market and says, okay, we're going to build a top-down tank game, because top-down tank games are really hot right now. Like, it's just an example, right? Top-down tank games are really hot right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to build a top-down tank game. The game designer in a big studio doesn't really realize, doesn't really have that decision, right? If you're making game by yourself, you're going to make that decision. But the game designer usually is told what to do by the product owner, who's some like boss, some executive, or some guy who knows the market really well. So the product owner tells the game designer, hey, listen, we're going to be building a top-down tank game. It's going to kind of look like this. Here's a reference game, kind of like use this game as a reference. Our competitor is going to be this is how it needs to look like, etc., etc. So then the game designer makes documentation. The documentation is basically, I'll talk about that in the next slide. But the documentation consists of what the game is going to be. It's like a blueprint, right? It's a blueprint of what the game is. So if you're going to be building a house, for example, if you're going to be building your own house, you're not just going to call the mystery or like the builder and say, all right, man, hey man, you can just start building whatever. Just like put one room here and then put one bathroom over there. I don't know, put a kitchen. No, no, no. You're going to have a plan. You're going to have a drawing, which is going to be like, this is the plan of the house, this is where the plumbing is, this is where the sewage is, etc., etc. You're going to actually have that plan before you start working on that game. So similarly, for a game designer, for a professional game designer, now some of you may be doing stuff by yourself, just like watching YouTube videos, and you're like, I want to build my own epic game, right? I'm sure you guys have done that. You probably didn't make documentation, and that's probably why it failed. Right? That's probably why you didn't finish the project, or even if you finished it, it was buggy and it didn't make any money. The reason that you guys didn't plan, you didn't make documentation. Professional game designers, professional game studios always make documentation because it's really, really important, right? Then this documentation goes to the game programmer, the game tester, and the game artist. And looking at this documentation, then the game artist is going to start creating the assets for the game. The game programmer is then going to start coding the features of the game, right? And then the game tester, once there's a build of the game ready, the game tester is going to be coming in and playing the build of the game and seeing whether the game in the documentation matches the game that the programmers and artists have made, right? And the game designer's job is to kind of oversee this process and see that everything's kind of going smoothly. So this is what the game designer's role in a game studio is, right? Now let's talk about game design documentation. Super, super important. What's the first thing that a game designer makes? A concept document. So concept document is basically kind of like a baby. Think of it as a baby game document. It's just like if 1 or 2 pages, like a very rough concept document. It doesn't have all the details of a game. It's just like, okay, this is what the game is going to be, this is what the mechanics are going to be, this is what the story is going to be. Like literally 1 page or 2 page, you can just read it in 1 or 2 minutes. It's like concept document is fast. You should be able to make 2, 3, 4 concept documents really quickly, just snap them out as a game designer. So it's not a detailed document. Okay, concept document is something really simple. And of course, this is a big part in G2M. We actually teach concept documents. We teach students how to come up with a game idea, how to create a concept document. And from there, you go to a game design doc. So game design documentation is a very detailed document. It's like all has lots and lots and lots of detail. It can, like AAA games probably have documentation goes to hundreds, maybe 1,000 pages, right? It's huge. It has every single detail of what the character is like, what the story is like, what the game mechanics are like, what the user interface like, what each button does. Everything is clearly defined in the game design doc. That is a blueprint that I was telling you about. Like very design, very detailed one. And again, in G2M, we actually we make a concept document. From the concept document, we actually start making the game design document, right? So in the call later on, if you guys want, I can actually share these game design docs with you and show you what it looked like. Then so you can also have something on a feature design doc. So for example, in a free-to-play game company, you might join a company as game designer, and the game is already made, right? The game is already running, and you're in live operation. Live operation means that the game is released, and you're like adding new features, like maybe you're adding a new leaderboard, you're adding a new season pass, you're putting a new feature in a game, like some kind of ability or something. So then that new thing which you're creating for the game will have its own design documentation, which got a feature design documentation. So you as a game designer may be asked to work on a feature design documentation, right? So generally these are 3 different kinds of documentation that you can have in a game. Next up, once again, so this is what a game designer does on a day-to-day basis. So game designer has already created a design document, and then what's going to happen is that the programmer, the tester, and the artist are going to start building the game. They're going to be inputting art and design and code, etc. And the game designer has to watch what's going on. It's not like the game designer is going to prepare a document and they just sit back and be like, all right, my work is done. Not really. So the game designer's job is to actually keep playing the game, because the game designer understands the game. The game designer understands what the game feels like. He or she is the one who knows really what the game is, right? So it's their job, it's the game designer's job to ensure that as the game is being built, it fits what it's supposed to be. And many times it doesn't, right? So then we have something called iteration. So the game designer informs the programmer, the tester, or the artist, and no, 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 this is not really the way it was supposed to be. And trust me, the product owner is going to be watching over you like a hawk all the time and also playing the game, because they're responsible for the game selling well. So the game designer's job is to kind of make sure that whatever the game is being built according to the specification. That's really, really, really important. So this is a continuous process that keeps going on till the end of the development of the game. Right now, let's talk about game design skills. If you're a game designer, what kind of skills do you need? This is very important because a lot of confusion about this. Let me get this clear. What you need to be a good game designer. First, I would say you need experience of playing games of different genres and platforms. Now, tomorrow there are people who want to join the mentorship program as game designers, and they come to me and say, "Sir, I want to be a game designer." So I always ask people, like, we screen people who wants to come into our programs, right? So I ask them, "Hey, listen, so what kind of games do you play?" He says, "Sir, I play PUBG and I play PUBG." So I'm like, "All right, thank you very much. Sorry, you can't be a game designer, because see, as a game designer, you need to have some experience. You need to have played a few different. See, you don't need to have played every single genre out there, but you need to have some knowledge of games. You need to have a decent knowledge of games, like little bit of shooters, little bit of games with story, maybe a little bit of mobile games, maybe a bit of casino games. Like, you need to have decent all round skills. You need to have a little bit of knowledge of our different game genres and different platforms to be a good game designer. To be a good game designer, right? That's what I'm saying. Next up, good writing and reading skills, because at the end of the day, you're going to be making a lot of documentation, right? You're going to be typing, you're going to be working a lot in Word, you're going to be working a lot with Google Documents, you're going to be working with Photoshop, making mockups, etc. So you have to like to read and write. Now, this is kind of not common these days, I get it, but you have to be able to write decent English. You don't have to be Shashi Tharoor, but you need to write decent English, short, concise, precise, to be able to describe what you want without too many grammatical mistakes, spelling mistakes, etc., to write uh, a document, right? You have to be able to communicate clearly and effectively. Now, the normal language of communication for a game designer is English, right? If you want to work for big companies like Electronic Arts, Zynga, the companies that pay really well, these have international teams. It's not that like everybody's sitting in one office in India and that's it. No, these are multinational companies. You may have a creative director who's sitting in Los Angeles, or somebody's sitting in like Paris if you're working for Ubisoft, or if you're working for Rockstar, you may have someone who's sitting in the US, who every day you have calls with them. So you need to be able to communicate clearly. If your English is not that good, if you're, see, like I said, you don't have to be Shashi Tharoor, but it's more about confidence than fancy words. Okay, I know a lot of people whose English is not that great, but they have confidence. They actually manage to get it across, and it works fine, right? So you should be able to communicate clearly and effectively with people. That's kind of really important. Next, confidence and presentation. So in Gamer to Maker, I always, what we do is we make sure that from the beginning we make you put on your camera in the calls, because I want people to be confident at showing themselves on camera, and we encourage people to present their own ideas. Their, if they come up with an assignment, they don't just submit an assignment, they actually present their assignment to the whole class, because you need to get that confidence, right? As a game designer, you have an idea, it's great. If it's in your head, you need to be able to put it out there, present it to people, show it to your team, show it to your bosses, to actually convince people this is a good idea. You have to be able to defend your idea. So confidence and presentation skills is something which is quite important if you want to be a game designer, right? And also remember, you have to deal with people with different mindsets, because On one side of a game designer, you have programmers. Like programmers are very logical. Like the B follows A, C follows B. They kind of mind moves in a very, very logical direction. And on the other hand, you have artists. Artists are not logical generally. I'm being a little bit judgmental here, sorry, but generally speaking, there are exceptions. Artists are kind of more emotional. They're more about feelings, about the vibe and how things are. So remember, your job is to kind of bring them together, right? You have to make artists and programmers work together to come up with a particular experience. At the end of the day, you're building an experience, which means that you have to one moment switch into logical mode, deal with the programmer, next moment deal switch into emotional mode to deal with an artist, and then you have to switch into business mode to deal with your product manager or your producer, and then you have to switch into a different mode when you're dealing with your tester. So you are dealing with people of different mindsets within the team, and your job is to kind of make them all stick together, and at the end your job is to make sure that you make a game, right? We have some mantras in Gamer to Maker. The first mantra is the only way to learn how to make video games is to actually make them. And the second mantra is it's not about me, it's about the game. It means that it's not about your ego, it's not about what makes you happy. At the end of the day, always focus on the game, always what's good on the game, what the players enjoys, and not about like, oh, I'm sad because my idea was neglected, etc., etc., etc. Okay. All right. Next. So there are a lot of people here, right? Let me know in the chat who are the programmers and artists, and they must be wondering, okay, right, but like here's the thing: I'm a programmer, I'm an artist. Why do I learn? Why do I need to learn game design? And my answer is that if you don't know any game design, you're going to suck as a programmer or artist. Okay, I'll tell you why. Because see, this is a game designer, this is a game programmer, this is a game artist, and there's a game tester. They all, everybody works with one single purpose, and that purpose is feelings. You have to create feelings, you have to create feelings in the minds of players. Everybody in the game team, even the programmers, even the artists, even the testers, have to get inside the player's mind a little bit to understand what they are creating and how players are going to react to what they're making. Okay, this is super, super important. So, the programmers who are just merely writing code and are completely disconnected from that process of creating emotions, they're terrible programmers. Like they're really bad to work with. And of course, as a game artist, you'll never survive because it's your art is really, really closely connected to what players feel, because what you're creating, characters or even trees or colors or whatever, really, really heavily influences. So everybody in the team has to understand that they're creating feelings. And if you understand game design, then that's really, really going to help you helpful. So there are actually a lot of programmers and artists in the game design program, um, of Gamer to Maker, and they've all been really, really happy because they really understood that process of game design, and it's really, really helped them, right? So if you want to be average game programmer, fine, don't worry about game design. But those of you are programmers and you want to be great game programmers, like the top 10%, like if you're thinking I want to go abroad, I'm going to work for Ubisoft, I'm going to do like awesome stuff with my career, I'm going to work in the US, I'm going to work for Naughty Dog. As a programmer and an artist, you need to learn game design, you need to understand game design. Otherwise, if you just stay in your silo, that's not going to work, trust me. Okay, now let's talk about game design disciplines. Game design is quite broad. Within game design, you have a lot of disciplines, and these are world and level designs, right? World and level. I'll explain a little bit after this as to what exactly level design is. Again, a lot of confusion about this. Is world and level design, which is the player actually builds the world. Next is mission design. So, see, listen, guys. Now, the important thing to remember is that a lot depends on the size of the studio. If it's a big studio, like if you're making a AAA game, or you're making an MMORPG, or you're making, like, I don't know, Uncharted or whatever, which is like a several hours game with like tons and tons and tons of content, those games have huge worlds. Those games have teams of hundreds. Okay, so a lot of these roles that I'm telling you are only apply to the really really big teams, right? So in a small company, for example, somebody could be doing mission design and level design together. But I'm talking about, just for example, talking about a big company with hundreds of people working. For example, you have world level design, you have mission design. So mission designer's job is to make sure that one particular mission one particular mission is completed in a certain way, right? So mission design is making sure that the player goes and achieves an objective from point A to point B and does this, not the entire game, one particular mission, right? You actually have mission designers as well. Next up, you have user interface design. Now user interface is really really important. So if you have complicated games like Sims, if you have complicated games like RPGs, the user interface is crazy. Like, you have menus and sub menus and buttons, and then menus within menus and all kind of things. So they are game designers whose only job is to actually make user interfaces. They're good at game design, but they're also good at graphic design, right? Next up, you have story and narrative. Now, story and narrative design is something which we take really seriously in Gamer to Maker. We actually have a separate masterclass series, which is like 12 hours for story and narrative. Story and narrative is super, super important. In India, generally, the role for story and narrative designer doesn't exist separately. You have to be a game designer with a specialization in story and narrative, but story and narrative is definitely a sub discipline of game design, right? Very, very important. Next up, systems design. Now, systems design is something which is quite complex, and it's kind of like a specialized task. So for example, if you're making a different game mode of your create oh for example, you want to have a leveling up system in your game, or you want to have a crafting system in your game, then that is a job of a system designer. The system designer is actually going to create one separate system. So you're going to have a system designer who's specifically kept in charge of the leveling up system, or the crafting system, or combat system, right? Even combat is a system. So in these really really big companies, there'll be a lead system designer who's only handling combat, one will only be handling etc etc. So system design is also a specialty. And the ring to rule them all is the lead designer. So the lead designer is the boss designer, who is kind of at the top of the hierarchy. How many of you want to be lead designers here? Put it in the chat. Let me know. If you want to be a lead designer, hit me and say, I want to be a lead designer. Hit me in the chat. So the lead designer is the boss of all the designers, right? He or she is the one that has a good idea of everything. He supervises everyone. And the lead designer is in the charge. Lead designer is in charge of lead designer is in charge of actually the game design document, right? He's the boss of all the designers. He understands everything. Wow, lots of me's. I want to be a lead all the way. Me for sure. All right, awesome. Okay, now big question, very very hot question of the day is what the is level design? A lot of confusion about level design. Okay, okay. Now, a lot of people they ping me and they send me an Instagram saying, Rahul, look at, I'm a level designer. And I'm like, what did you do? So look, I took these assets from the game store or from Unreal, and I put all these assets together. I created a beautiful scene, right? I created this beautiful scene, and it's like a game level, and it's got awesome lighting, and it's got these really beautiful environments, and like it's so nice. Like, I made this level. I'm a level designer, and I want to just like pa! Like, no, you're not. This is not level design, guys. This is like, I don't even know what it is. It's not even environment design. It's just like scene creation. And like, no one hires you for scene creation. Okay, I'm sorry to burst a bubble of a lot of people, but you're just making a scene in Unreal or Unity. I'll tell you what level design really is. This is level design. This is what a level designer does. Now, this is, for example, is an example of a level, right, from a game. So the level designer starts with this, makes a diagram, says, okay, this is the start point. Can you see a red star? That's a level start. The level is going to start here. The aircraft is going to land on the helipad. The player is going to get off from there and then over there. Then, as you can see, you're going to have enemies. You're going to have this many enemies spawning here, and then the player is going to kind of kill these enemies and go down the staircase. And then when he goes down the staircase, there's going to be maybe a cinematic playing in which this is just going to happen, and there's going to be an object or there's going to be a new weapon for the player, and then the player goes into the next hall, and then over there you have this slightly stronger enemy, and maybe the player is going to die a couple of times, and then maybe the player can take a different route and go this way or that way and have a route, a choice. This is what the player does, planning the moment to moment of what the player is going to do. And then you have to place the triggers and the spawn points. As a level designer, you actually have to make these events happen, not through necessarily through coding. You can even, so the programmers write the code, you just have to place them. The programmer say, okay, here's a trigger I made for you. So then if you place this trigger, a bot will spawn, right? Or an enemy will spawn. So level designer goes and places that trigger and then makes the enemy spawn, right? Guiding the player as to what to do next, creating so the level designer's job is to make sure from moment to moment the players knows what to do next, right? Next, creating cinematic cutscenes. So creating and placing it, right? There may be a different cinematic designer, but you have to kind of take the story forward by saying, okay, at this point this is going to happen. Next up, creating and adjusting difficulty. Very, very important, because the game has to get difficult. Like, there's got to be progression, right? Otherwise players are going to get bored, and this is also level designer's job, because you have to actually make the challenges more and more difficult so that the player actually stays engaged. Introducing new mechanics. So, for example, in a game, you start off with walking, and then you start jumping, and then you have a double jump, which is introduced, and then maybe you have a new weapon, a new ability, a new power up. Introducing new mechanics, teaching the player how to use these new mechanics is also level designer's job, right? Placing weapons and pickups, right? So that, guys, is what level design is. So once again, guys, I'd be happy to answer all your questions about all this stuff. If you want to know how to be a level designer, etc., scan this code right here. If you can't scan that code, go to the description. There's a link right at the top of the description. There's a link. Click on that link. You'll be able to submit your questions, and you'll be able to submit. You'll be able to register for the exclusive Zoom mentorship call, which is right after this. Obviously, it's on Zoom. Okay. Now let's talk about game design careers. Right. You must have seen people. A lot of people saying, "Beta, listen. If you want to be a game designer, first do your engineering, and then we'll see." Right. And honestly, that's a waste of time, because, like, you'll be spending 3 or 4 years doing something which you don't really like, right? In any case, the problem is that we have too many engineers. We have very, very, very few employable engineers. So if someone says, I'm a BTech or I'm a CSE graduate, but I don't want to actually do this, they're most probably going to be unemployable anyway, right? It's quite sad. But why, right? Another question I'll ask you, if this has to do with game design, is, Rahul, why are not we be able to make good games in India? Why? Why don't we have a GTA? Why don't we have a God of War? Why don't we have Assassin's Creed in this country? How come? How come India is not able to make these games? And I'll tell you exactly why. Right? So this is the game. I remember I showed you. This is the game designer's role in game development. Is really, really important. Really, really, really important role to build a good world class game is a game designer's job, right? And this is how it works in the West. This is how many game programmers are there. If there are 100 game programmers, you will have 90 game artists, and you'll have 50 game designers. This is normally the ratio in which you have people working in a AAA game studio, right? So, however, in India, this is the ratio. We don't have game designers because everybody went to engineering college. Nobody's mom and dad let them become game designers, because they are like, oh, beta, game designer kya banoge? What's the use of becoming a game designer? You're not going to get a job. Quora, may I read this thing that, I read this question that there is a problem with game design. I've heard salaries are very low. You're not going to get jobs, which means that ultimately there is so much demand for game designers that studios are going crazy because we don't have any. We don't have any. We have very, very few game designers. We have a game design, we have a game industry that is crazy right now, and we don't have game designers. Just very, very few game designers. So studios are desperate. They're throwing money, right? Which is why this right now is the best Indian game, right? That's the truth. If somebody asks you next time why are Indian games crap, then you tell them why. It's because we don't have enough game designers. There's no one to design the games, right? We have a lot of engineering people, we have a lot of art people. We don't have designers. There's a huge shortage of designers. Everyone's desperate for good designers. Okay, now let's talk about career prospect for game designers. Can you make a good living as a game designer? Yes, of course. Are you kidding me? There are 500 plus game studios in India, guys, and they are growing every single day. Most of these need game designers desperately, and they're getting like random people to do game design, which is why the games are kind of crap. Okay, it's not difficult to get a job of game designer if you're good, if you're professional, if you know your stuff. You can get a job like this, and you can get a good job like this. Okay, and remember, these are starting salaries are actually higher for designers than they are for programmers and artists, right? Also abroad, I know a lot of people who have actually moved abroad and gotten jobs in the US and Canada, etc., as game designers, and that's also definitely possible. Okay, so I'm quickly going to go over what a typical day as a game designer looks like. The morning, you're going to have like 10 o'clock or so, you're going to sit down with your entire team, design team, programming team, art team, and you're going to be having a call. You talk about the work. What's going to happen? What kind of work are you doing? What did you do yesterday? If you face any issues, it's usually led by the scrum master or the team lead. And then you'll be showing your work, and you'll be getting feedback on that, and then you'll be obviously discussing what kind of work will be done during the day. So everywhere, every game team, the morning scrum is like a really important thing which happens everywhere. Next, for example, you'll be playing the latest build. The program will say, "Hey, I released a build of the game. Here it is." So then you'll sit down and you'll actually be playing a build of the game, and you'll be finding out what new things have been implemented in the game. And you'll be kind of like you'll be making notes saying, "Okay, this is good. This is not good. This needs to change. This is a problem. This is a bug, etc., etc., etc." You'll be checking the gameplay. You'll be checking the user interface, the art, sound, animation, everything. So as game designer, you have to make sure that everything, all of these things are actually the way they are supposed to be. The experience of the game is the way it's supposed to be, right? And then this feedback that you have, you're going to share it with the programming lead saying, "Acha, programming mein problem hai, art mein problem hai," whatever it is. Like, you're going to be sharing with the respective leads, right? And then every morning meeting, you're going to find out about how this process went, right? Next, documentation. So it's possible that there are some changes to the game based on feedback. So you'll be editing a game design document. You'll be like saying, "Okay, this is supposed to be like that, but then it's going to be changed." Or maybe you're making a separate feature, right? Creating a separate feature document for a new game. And then maybe you'll be making a mock-up. There's a new screen which has been introduced. So you'll be actually making we'll be actually spending some time making a mock-up. Okay. All right, next, creating a flowchart, right? Creating a flowchart saying, "Okay, this is how the game is. This is the start. From start you go to level design, new game. Then you have a save menu, and then the game starts. From the game you have the pause menu. From the pause menu you have restart or reset game, that kind of thing, right? You could be doing something like that as a game designer, right? Another thing you're doing is building new game levels. This is one of the coolest parts, because this is where game designers use Unity and use Unreal. Now, you don't necessarily have to know coding. Normally, you don't know coding, but you have to use the engine because you have to build a world, Remember, I talked about level design. So your job is to actually build the game world. You have to actually build it. You have to place the objects. You have to place the triggers. So you'll actually be using Unreal Trigger for that. Okay. You'll be like pl- the crazy thing as a level designer, you'll be playing the level 100 times. Okay, you'll know that level in your sleep. Okay, and you'll be of course tweaking mechanics. And of course, meetings. Game designers always have meetings. They have a lot of meetings. You have a meeting with programmers, artists, product teams. You're clarifying doubts and difficulties. You're presenting the new features to the testing team. You're having call with the IP owners, maybe if there's an IP involved. Okay. Now, I've put a slide over here about convincing your parents, because I know a lot of you may have problems about convincing your parents to be a game designer. So my guidance is do your research first, right? Have a look at that many videos about this stuff on my YouTube channel about like how why game development is a good career. You can even show them those videos. You can watch them so you can make an argument, right? Actually go look at job sites like Naukri, Monster, Glassdoor, LinkedIn. Do your research. Say game design, game design jobs, and see how many game design jobs are there. Look at the job descriptions. Many of them actually have the figures. They have the salaries. They have the approximate salaries that they are offering. Do your research, right? Yeah, remember that. See, you have to be sure, right? Your parents are not going to be supporting you unless you're like, yes, I want to be a game designer. This is my future. This is what I want to do. If you're like, maybe I don't know if I want to be a game developer, design, that's not going to work, right? They're going to pounce in you and say, okay, go straight to engineering college and become an engineer, right? Like that's not going to work. And then of course I have some videos in which I'm actually showing some successful game designers on my YouTube channel. You can show that as well, right? Okay, now salaries. Let's talk a little bit about salaries. Now these, to give you an example, are some of the students who have been placed in as game designers in game and technical designers, right? Now the honest truth of the matter is that, guys, remember that the bigger the company, the better the company, the better the salary. So if you're going to join a small startup, right, you're not going to get that salary, right, because they don't have the budget. If you're going to join Zynga, if you're going to join like a big companies like Play Simple Games, then you're going to get a much higher salary. So obviously, and everyone, all my students who actually join game companies, they tell me how much they earn, right? I can't obviously tell you who's earning how much, but in this, the range of game designers goes from about 4.5 lakh rupees per year to about 10.5 lakh rupees per year. Okay, also it depends on if you're an intern or if you're a junior game designer, but the range goes all the way from 4 to 10, 11, 12. Like I know that Electronic Arts actually pays game designers 12 lakh rupees as interns. Can you believe it? 12 lakh rupees a year as an intern at Electronic Arts Hyderabad as a design intern. Yes, it's true, people are getting those jobs right now, right? So salaries are really good, right? Especially if you join a decent company. And a lot of people from G2M, because of our connections, because we have agreements with game studios, etc., they're getting placed at really good salaries. Okay. Okay, so now, guys, that was it. We are almost time's up. So now I hope you guys, those of you who are interested in joining in the live mentoring session in Zoom, I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna have a quick glass of water, and sharp at 10 o'clock, I'm gonna be joining. The Zoom call. So remember, the questions that I will be answering, the interactions are only with people who have submitted your questions here. Okay, if you have questions, if you want mentorship, because what happens is that everyone like unmutes, they talk, it becomes crazy. So what I've done is that we've actually asked people to submit all their questions, and hopefully that time is actually up. So but you can listen even if you couldn't did if you couldn't submit your question. It's 90% chance you'll be able to actually, somebody else will have asked that question and you still be able to get that doubt clarified. But space is limited because Zoom calls have limited numbers of people. So please join us on the Zoom call. after this, and I will see you guys there. Thank you very much. Just give me time to grab a quick cup of coffee and some water, and I will see you there. Okay. All right. Let's look at the chat. Yeah. Okay. All right. Where are we now? Let me stop sharing. Stop screen. So here we are. No, this one. Also, if you scan this QR code, you'll be in touch with us, right? You can actually book a session if you're interested in the programs as well. If you're in the G2M program, scan this, and you'll be able to get in touch with us. You can book yourself a career counseling session. We'll be able to answer all your questions, etc., etc. Okay, so 5 minutes, guys. Just gonna grab a cup of coffee, have some patience. I will see you guys very soon. Bye.